Asian art market or the perception of Asian art market comes from auctions, comes from the secondary market. And because video art doesn't belong to that category, so it's not into that market. And that's what I mean, like when we talk about market, when we talk about Asian contemporary art, we think of market and we don't look at video art. But it doesn't necessarily mean the the artists they are making, they use this medium as a kind of anti-market strategy. But I would like to say also the prices of video artists is actually going up, like really fast. And the production that the artists are able to invest, sometimes with ads from galleries, it's also kind of becoming more and more important.
The works are more and more produced, and there's also the production model of cinema, which is also becoming a form of new standard in video to increase the value, the material value of the work, and make it more sophisticated and more prestigious also, you know, by referring to the cinema tradition rather than the video tradition, which is like the poor image, you know, that Hiroshi talks about. It's also a fact, though, that at the FIAC this year we didn't see much video art. Did you notice there were maybe 3 video artworks in the entire fair? So like, how do you comment?
It was similar to it, there were very few videos. It was similar to it, there were very few videos. In general, you know, one day I asked Centre Pompidou, the very well-known gallery in France, I asked her why you don't show video, why fairs, the galleries are not showing videos, and she said, because it takes a lot of space, because it doesn't sell, and I prefer to put photos, painting, etc. on my wall, then I sell. Understood? It's economy. Pure economy. And in addition to the Grand Palais, if you look at the Grand Palais, last year there was a gallery from Berlin, they came with a video, and because of the light interference of the verrière of the Grand Palais, you know, you could not see the image. And you know, it was standing, it was sort of street, and it was standing, and you have to stand up. To stand up, the people first they don't want to wait standing up, and second you don't see anything. Conclusion: the people should go to Loop, which is a fair dedicated to video. In Barcelona, in hotel rooms, it's like at home, you know, and look at video as if you were in your living room. There is no interference, and you can lie on the bed if you want, and it's fantastic.
The paradox, though, is that video is no longer, of course, a marginal practice. It has become mainstream practice among art, which was not the case in the first place in the 70s. And also that you don't find many artists only specialized in video. I mean, video has now penetrated all the fields of the multi-practice based art. And in that sense, it's very paradoxical that there's a divide between the biennials and all the collective shows in which you see more and more video works, especially mixed with other media, and then the market is like excluding more and more the video, at least in fairs.
Yeah, but don't you think it's also a matter of fashion? I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that video art is like bathing suits. You know, I mean, well, bathing suit or skirt or whatever. You know, there is fashion. So one day, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I heard a collector tell me, now it's painting. Now it's painting. But video, no, painting. So, I mean, there are people who leave some kind of fashion, and then you can tell them that it's always, the fashion is always coming back. But, I mean, there are people who, they listen, it's like a herd. They listen to what somebody is saying, and they all say the same. Incredible. Incredible, no? The trend.
Trends, not just about even trends in painting is the same way. But I want to say that, so I read some kind of artist interviews before they, in Asia, like some Asian artists, they were saying that because there's no school teaching new media, so you have to learn making videos by yourself. That as an artist, you just explore the medium by yourself. And in a way, there's also that no one there to judge you, because it's all about experimentation. And so one artist said that I want to be a painter. I went to a painting school and I find out that I'm not talented at that. And so I picked up a video camera, like back then it's a camera recorder. And he just started shooting things all by himself. And he realized that this is kind of far more experimenting than painting. So he stick with the medium and then later on he just keep exploring. So it's also kind of a medium that speaks to young artists, particularly artists who are looking out who are not kind of medium specific, but who want to just go on to this kind of more progressive and something that adaptable to their ideas. And I think video, it's something that they kind of easily think about or something that they will go to. And it's also got to what you said, like it's a medium that penetrates into all domains and all the artists.
But that's not right, but also the fact that older generation of the young collectors now, in the 40s or whatever, they are born in a society of image. They were born in a society, my children were born in a society of image. And that means that all the image, the moving image and computer, etc., it's a language they fully understand. A lot of people in my generation don't understand. They don't understand what is a computer, So that's, and the artists the same. The artists, many artists have used new technologies. It's normal. Duchamp was doing that, Leonardo da Vinci was doing that. So, it's absolutely normal that the artists are using new technology and they want to experiment it. That's it.
Yeah, I think just to say what you were saying about the fact that more and more artists are like self-taught and they would just pick up a video camera and do work. I'm going to be a bit provocative in saying what I'm going to say. Isn't that sometimes a trap to think that it's in fact that it can be a very spontaneous medium and that there is no need for visual culture and especially culture of time, because it's a time-based form of art, and if there is no work invested in how you think about time, how the structure, how you write time in the medium you're using, that it doesn't really work. All the primitive gestures in video have been done, and finding new forms of primitive gestures is very difficult to find in one work both this form of spontaneity and a real strength, something that is really strong that is at stake. So in my opinion, I may sound a bit conservative, which is not the purpose, but it's also to, maybe open to other viewpoints. There is the need to think, deeply about this question of how you deal with time in video.
I think the starting point for many artists is they want to experiment with the medium, and then and of course in the process they have to figure out the kind of specificity of this medium as well as what you said, time-based, but then also the narrative and the composition of the camera, like the movement, and they all figure out all these things in the process. But to respond to your question about the time-based elements in video, I have to say that very often video starts as a documentation of performance. And performance, it's by itself time-specific, because it happens only at that moment. And now we see more and more kind of performance actually staged for the camera, and with our actual audience presence, as you can see also from some of the videos that we just shown here. And so it's the performance, the artist as a performer, the artist he would identify, he or she would identify as a performance artist, but the work that would be shown in the gallery or in an exhibition is the video work. So there's a...
Merci à tous d'être là, merci à nos trois invités aujourd'hui, à Selina Ting, fondatrice de CoBo Social, d'être là, d'avoir voyagé aujourd'hui jusqu'à Aijona en direct de la Biennale de Bangkok. Merci à Jean-Conrad, collectionneur, et en particulier de vidéo, d'être là avec nous aujourd'hui. Merci à Marcella Lista, à la fois curatrice, historienne de l'art et directrice des Nouveaux Médias au Centre Pompidou à Paris. Cette conversation, j'en avais envie depuis un petit moment et on tourne à Aijona depuis un petit moment autour de la vidéo qui prend de plus en plus d'importance sur la scène asiatique comme d'autres scènes. Et j'avais très envie pour Aijona, et ça tombe bien là, juste après les projections de cette journée et le programme vidéo Art Asia qui est curaté par Selina de CoBo Social, les documentaires de Patricia Chan, le programme également curaté par Odile Burluro du musée d'art moderne sur les films d'animation. C'est, je crois, une bonne journée pour se pencher d'une manière qui n'est pas théorique du tout, puisque vos expériences sont tout à fait empiriques et réelles, peut-être mettre en perspective ce qui est en train de se passer aujourd'hui dans la communauté des artistes qui sont de plus en plus sur cette pratique, et de se poser la question de ce que ça veut dire aujourd'hui collectionner la vidéo. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, quels sont les enjeux, faire rentrer la vidéo dans une collection publique, acquérir la vidéo pour soi et constituer une collection de vidéos d'une manière privée et du point de vue un peu plus global sur peut-être l'Asie avec Selina, en conversation aussi avec Marcella. Quelle est cette relation à l'art contemporain, en particulier sur la pratique vidéo. Voilà, merci à tous les trois d'être là et je vous laisse la parole.
Merci Alexandra. I think we will switch into English for this talk. We were not exactly certain who was going to moderate it, so it will be more of a conversation between the three of us. So I've been knowing Jean-Conrad and Marcella Lemaître since a while now, because their collection is, of course, one of the pioneer collection video art in France. And maybe we'll start with you, Jean-Conrad, maybe simply to ask how came this idea of actually, if I remember well, selling basically all of your art collection to focus on video art? And how came this idea?
Well, we've been collecting for a long time, in fact, with my wife, and we started with painting, sculpture, photo, and then finally at the end, video. In fact, the photo was already image, and then when we saw that there was moving image, in fact, we followed the artist. When the artist moved to video, not very because video is not from the 90s, but from the 60s. But the artist, there was a renaissance in the 90s, and when we saw in the gallery, in London, a video we were very pleased to acquire it. And since then we have exclusively collected video. I have something to add, to explain apart from that. Is my opinion is when you have reached the moving image, it's very difficult to come back. My opinion, I cannot come back to still image. I cannot photo paintings or because a moving image is life, you know? And it's life. And when we had our first exhibition in the La Maison Rouge in 2006, when you went into the exhibition of 25 videos, it was like a courtyard of a children's school in the garden. And you had, everybody was crying, fighting, laughing, and so on. But when you went out, silence, mortel, that is silence. So personally, I think video art is really, video moving image is really life. And that's why I like it.
What was the first piece you acquired?
And we bought Vivian Warren. It was the first piece, and it was called Boys Time. And well, it was four boys sitting on a bench for 1 hour. So that by the end, of course, they become really very nervous, and they can't stand it anymore. And she did the same with Policeman. That's quite a good work. And then we carried on buying videos. But always by coup de cœur, no by and essentially artists who were young artists. We bought many of the artists before they were known, they were more famous and so on. In addition, we would not have been able to buy them because it would have been too expensive. So we bought in England and then in other countries when we exhausted the English scene, and we bought from Europe and then from Asia. We bought video from Asia and from Latin America. Is that the response to?
Yes, very interesting. Also, one interesting thing is that when you exhibited for the first time, I believe, your collection of La Maison Rouge, I don't know whether it was you or the Maison Rouge who decided to call Didier Faustino, an architect, to do the scenography. And that was a very important part, I think, of this gesture of exhibiting your collection.
It was the best exhibition we had. Apart from there was another one in Shanghai 2 years ago that we took, but this one was really the best exhibition we had because of the scenography, because of the imagination in the scenography. There were several different ways of showing the videos, and also because of the choice. It was Christine from the Pompidou who was the curator. So it was the whole combination was perfect.
It was a good way to deal with sound as well, this scenography, as I remember.
Yes, because we, at the time, we had sound bells, sound bells which are like dish, and it's a laser in the ears of the people that you don't hear them outside. It was used in the piano of Venice, and also there were rooms where it was like beehive, in the beehive you have all these materials, and each of these little things, like a beehive, a part of a beehive, the rest of the video. And then on the wall, and then yes, on the wall. But all from the sound experience and from the light experience was fantastic. No interference. I remember one experience I had. It was a very good collection, a European collection, and they were showing in Madrid. And I was with Christine Bonash, and she told me we should never do a thing like that. And it was full of sound and light interference. It was terrible. It was terrible. So it was fantastic. I mean, this exhibition was first class. And there's a journalist from Humanité who came, he was entering, and they say, and he said, what is it? And they said vidéo, and he said, okay, I go. No, I said, no, stay. And I explained to him the exhibition and so on, and he entered. And the article in his newspaper was the best article ever seen on the work. Fantastic. Well, it's like this. You get converted. I don't think you need a lot of patience because, if you go to the Louvre and you see Leonardo da Vinci painting, I think there are people who stay half an hour long. There are people who stay there for half an hour in contemplation. So why can't you watch the video for 25 minutes? I understand.
And Selina, when did you decide to create the platform, the online platform, which is an editorial platform, CoBo Social, to gather some works by video artists, which you select, I imagine, and what was the principle behind it?
So it's two separate projects. We start CoBo Social as an editorial. The editorial part was launched in 2016 in March, and then the video project comes after. We just started 2017, so last September. And the idea that we wanted to do this is, so I was in a conference, and one of the artists who did a presentation on his work is Zhang Peilin. So a Chinese artist, he's regarded as the first Chinese artist working on new media. So he produced video work in the 80s. And back then they were all in VHS. And you would not be able to see this work anymore because it's the format that he didn't convert them into digital. So they're still in VHS. And then so at the presentation he showed a few clips of his earlier work, which are super conceptual in the sense that in the 80s we know that the whole movement of Chinese contemporary art started as kind of political pop. He was part of the artist, part of the movement. And the work that he produced, in the video work, it's very conceptual, and there's a very strong kind of political critique there. But at that time, the Chinese government or the police, they just couldn't get it. So the work exists, and the work were exhibited back then without censorship. But then nowadays it's impossible to see the work. If you do a research online or anything, you see kind of still images printed on catalogs, black and white, but it doesn't tell what the video work is about. So I was fascinated because I didn't realize that in the 80s there were so many video work produced, and there was some similarities in the kind of sensibility that I feel like between this Zhang Peilin in particular with some Western artists like masters in video art, the pioneers that we know today. So we wanted to highlight this dimension of video art produced in Asia because of the kind of overwhelming kind of market-oriented contemporary art and that kind of associations that we have with Asian contemporary art, particularly Chinese contemporary, that we ignore the other side of art production, which is video art. And so we think that it would be interesting to start this video work database, which we see it as a research archive. And we encourage artists and galleries to upload the video full length or just a few clips because you have to see the video in order to understand what is it about. An image doesn't make sense to a curator or an art historian. And then also because Asia is so big, and there are countries or regions which is not in the kind of usual trajectory of international curators. So they would not go to, for example, they won't go to Myanmar or go to Cambodia just to see, to find the video artists. So we think that this digital platform, which is easily accessible for everyone, would be helpful for the artists. That's how we start.
Yes, you mentioned that the video art in the late 80s, but especially early 90s in China, focused a very conceptual practice, also based on simple actions that were recorded, performance-oriented forms of art. And that's, I think also the political aspect of it is that it's very discrete, it's an immaterial medium. And that you find also in the traditions of Latin America. For instance, the use of video art in the 70s under the dictature was a way to produce very quickly done and discrete forms of gestures that were maybe not falling easily under the censorship and so forth. So that's a very important point. But now you seem to say that the same likeness of the medium and is also a way to resist the market somehow, that it's another form of resistance. Would you say that?
I would say that because video art, I think, is not only in Asia, but video art because of it's not something that easily circulate in the secondary market. And a lot of bubbles, ambiguity, this is maybe museums or scholars do more research on kind of identifying the difference or if it does the same thing. So I think now, for example, there's one video that was on Samsung Young, which is a bit lost when I see like throughout the program, the line dance. It's a bit lost because if we look at it as a video work, it doesn't really make sense that why it's important or interesting to see the work. But the artist is a sound artist, so what he's trained in music, but he became a visual artist, and the element that is interesting for him is that he cut out all the percussion. So in a traditional line dance, it's all about the percussion, about the music, the rhythm that guide the line dances. But then, because he works with sound, so he cut out, the performance is a staged performance just for the camera, so there's no percussion, which means the line dancers, they have to use the rhythm of their own body, and the sound captured is the step and the chewing of the vegetable, all these things. But in a real line dance, a traditional line dance, you are not supposed to hear this other sound. So he has no other choice but to use the video as the medium for his work. But then just now when I was watching it with the whole program, I realized that if we don't put it in that context as a sound artist, the video itself is be lost.
I agree. Also, maybe another provocative question to you. Since, as Jean-Conrad, you mentioned that you were first interested in the image, and then now, all the digital natives are born in a world of mediation through images. Also, it's true that the moving image is taken in many different forms, interactive forms on the web or other devices. Installation mixing still and moving image, or mixing sound work with image and so forth. So does it still make sense, very provocative, to focus on specificity of video, be it in a fair like Loop or platform of streaming or display online?
That's a tough question. Well, the installation, very often they mix objects and video. In fact, I think that there has been an objectivization of the culture of the collector for a long time, a very long time. And I think they have a lot of difficulties to separate themselves from the object and to go to immaterial. So that's why it's very difficult for collectors of a certain age and so on to bring them into a video show and to, or in a gallery or in a fair and so on. So I think personally that I could not go for there was an animation there. I liked it. I think it was an interesting animation. But I would have to start a new collection of animation, you see? So then there are videos now which are based on, which are done with computer and 3Ds and all that stuff. You know, it's various segments, but various collections. I don't have the means to make several collections. There are people who are buying, a big collection with all kinds of works of art, all kinds of media, and I don't have the means.
For you, it has to be specialized.
I would like to be specialized, but I'm not bad, but I like it.
But if you consider video like moving image, because it's a free-form conversation, yeah, if the definition of video art cannot explain it because it's moving image, then can animation become, because animation is also moving image, because do you set the difference between video and animation? But if it's moving image, then it's a...
Well, moving image is cinema also, I have films that, you cannot collect, I cannot collect everything. I cannot collect moving image because I would have to start a collection, an additional collection of moving image. I don't have the means. So I carry on with my, I'm struggling to buy new videos, but I've been buying videos and buying works of art with my salary or with, very modestly. So, it's very nice for people like Pinot or whatever. They can afford to buy whatever they want. But myself, I have to be very careful and to choose what I like, and carry on with this medium.
So, same question to you, Selina. Is your project really based in the framework of video, what you call video art, or does it open to what we call media art more generally?
We struggled a lot with the term. And then we finally put video art because we don't want the title to be too long. And like moving image, like we want just to, like when we say the word, everybody understand what it means. And as a matter of fact, we can include things. It's what like moving image also includes things. And so it's problematic to put it that way. Like whether it should be moving image or new media or digital or video. So we just go for the lazy thing. Use video like it's something people, there is a kind of common connotation there. What about the museum's perspective? You use moving image.
Yes, I think there's a terminological crisis about these issues right now because there is the term video, there is the term film, forms that are inherited from cinema that come into video practice or digital film and so forth, and then there are the interactive or multiple images, algorithmic compositions and so forth, which complicate a lot the definition of this field. At the Centre Pompidou, it's a very unusual situation. We have a department for film or cinema and a department for what is called new media. But new media was actually baptized in the early 80s, so it actually what was new media at the time, video and sound, even though there are some websites from artists and algorithmic works, a few of them in the collection. So when I arrived 2 years ago, great work done by Christine Banache, Jean-Conrad has named earlier. She was the one founding the collection. There was a question, should we change the name of the department? And it was impossible to come up with a convincing name, especially because the term media art doesn't translate in French. I think the Canadians use art médiatique, but it has another resonance. It's more reference to mass media than so yeah. So I decided for the time being just to experiment with this title and also to ask some scholars to examine the term. And we'll see. It's an open end.
You wanted to talk. You talked before about the secondary market. I think the reticence of collectors to buy video is due to several reasons. First, there is no secondary market for video. Well, I thought maybe being by now, but I mean for video in general, there is no secondary market, so they are anxious about that. The second thing is that the technology is frightening them because they are collectors. If you talk to them, they tell you, okay, Mr. Lemaître, in 6 months your technology is obsolete, you know. And then they are afraid that their work will be copied. And, you know, so there are quite a few objections, if you want, which are not real, I mean, in my opinion, they are not real objections, but the people, the new things are always frightening them. That's the thing. No?
And also that you can't look at it all the time. A painting you put
You cannot look at it all the time.
Yeah, a painting you put on the wall, you see it all the time. Video art you can.
There is a collector in America called Mrs. Carnage, and she's the biggest collection, private collection in the world, and they have flat screens all over their house, and there are videos permanently on them. And then now she says that it's too noisy, and she's fed up with it. And let me tell you one thing about what you said. You collect videos. If you collect a work of art and you see it once in a while with friends, it's a festive moment, it's a special moment. Just imagine that you have a girlfriend or wife and you don't see her for 1 month. When you see her after 1 month, I can tell you it's an event, no? So it's the same. If you have a work of art, you don't see it for a while, and you sit with friends, but rarely, it's an emotion. I mean, it's something special. You make it something special. If you see your painting every day on the wall, you don't see them anymore. Really? I experienced it.
About the role of curators, I was wondering, because Jean-Conrad and Isabelle, you always ask curators to present your collection when you circulate the collection.
Yes.
Can you say a few words about this? How do you choose them? Is it always the same, or do you choose according to local context?
So we take curators because we don't want to choose works from our collection. It's as if you had 10 children and somebody asks you, who is the one you prefer? You can't do things like that. So we like all the pieces in our collection. I think curator from Asia, for instance, or curator from each region is going to be capable of understanding or feeling it or whatever according to his own ancestral scheme. See? So we always, a French prefers somebody else to choose. We don't want to.
You want me to talk about?
Yes, I mean, do you invite curators to use the platform?
So, because we just started a year, but we want to be inclusive, which means we want to reach to those relatively kind of off the center regions. And because we're based in Hong Kong and Asia is so big, so we have this kind of projects which we invite curators from, for example, from Vietnam, from Sri Lanka, to do online exhibitions on our platform. So they would come up with a program of video art and then invite the local artists to participate. And then we can show that during a month, like it's there. If you're interested, you click on the banner that we announced that there's this online exhibition and you can view all the programs, like all the video, maybe 1 hour kind of compiled by the curator. So that's one of the ways for us to reach out to those local artists that we don't know them yet. And also we have the kind of curators who are specialists on their own region to come up with new artists and new work. We will start this next year because we also want to pay the curators. So we have to come up with a budget scheme to pay the curators to do this. Yeah, probably next year we will start.
And what about the question of online streaming?
Alors là, that's a good question. I wanted to talk about it. Well, first, I think that it's very reductive, yes, it's it reduces the work if you show it on a computer screen. I mean, a lot of artists want the work to be shown in a certain disposition, 3 meters, 2 meters, so I think it's not good. The other thing is that online you know where you enter, but you don't know where you are. And I think it's a bit dangerous to go into internet for the artists. A lot of young artists they believe that by showing on the internet they will have a massive audience. I think it's very dangerous for them because you don't know where it's going to locate, where it's going. And a lot of artists they give you an interdiction to put online. A lot of artists they forbid, and it's written in their rules or whatever. They give you a certificate. My opinion on the topic is very clear. A lot of countries, developing countries, they don't have access to works. A lot of countries have no structured museum, and Latin America or Africa, I think that there is a good reason that works would go via internet to these people, because otherwise they don't see anything. So I believe that students, professors, and all these people should have an access via internet to works of artists. In France we have the Pompidou, in Jean-Conrad, in England, and we are all super spoiled. But these people, they have nothing. Do you agree?
Yes, so what we do is that we also respect the artist's concern for, say what you said, you don't know where your work, if you put it fully online, where would it go? So we encourage artists to put a watermark. It's for private viewing only throughout the video. And some of the artists they object to the idea of putting up uploading the full info of the video online. So they would put clips, just 30-second or 2 minutes clip. But the database that we are building is for research purpose. So we are not totally fully concerned that the video is not full length, because it's as far as it's better than a still image. It's even though it's 2 minutes or 30-second clip, the researcher will get an idea of the feel, of the sound, of the mood. That's already a first step. But of course, when we do events like this, we show the full length, but then we have a long agreement with the artist, a temporary agreement that we're going to show at this occasion on this specific date, and so that the artist they can also reject. Some of the work have to, as what Jean-Conrad said, has to be very specific with the way that it's shown. Then we also have to be specific with the artist. It's going to be like this. If they agree, then we do it. If they don't agree, we leave it for another time.
Yeah, some artists actually want to have their work online in full length. So would you forbid them, for instance, if you acquire work from an artist? Would you say, okay, but I'm acquiring this, but provided that you don't put it on the internet?
That is a very good question. That is a very good question, actually. If you have a work in 5 copies, and the artist showing it for the whole world on the internet, what do you think as a collector? Because you paid a fortune. It's like the artist he sells you a work. I mean, I'd say any figure, 10,000 euros, and 5 copies, and then he sells it in 100 copies of the same work for nothing, for very little money. What do you think as a collector? Why do you pay so much money to have a work of an artist, and then the same work is sold like a croissant, you know? That's no good, no? And on the internet, same thing. Frankly, I don't know artists. I don't know of the artists I have who want to be on the internet.
I'm taking the case just as an example. It's not in Asia, but the case of Marcella Lista, for instance, who has all his videos on Creative Commons. So he wants basically them to be accessible, downloadable in low res. And yes, he creates a situation where it belongs to anyone. But of course, the museum acquire them, acquire installation versions of them, and it's a different status then. Yeah, but it's part of the concept.
No, but as she was saying, you know, the artists, they make an extract version, or when they go on internet, on programmation TV or whatever, they make an extract. They also put for viewing only, or I mean, or they put very bad quality. So at the end of the day, I mean, as a collector, I would not be concerned. In addition, if somebody makes a copy of your work, I think it doesn't matter. Because if you go to Christie's and say, you never sell anything, you will never sell it. It's a joke. It's a joke.
So for example, I remember that the epic film or video, Christian Mark 24 hours.
The clock.
The clock, yes.
Yeah, it's so expensive that 2 or 3 million has to
yes,
down
right.
purchase. And you can still see some clips. People just film it from the school and put it on YouTube, and I still enjoy watching those productions.
You know, I think that the whole story is very simple. The people who own a work of like a sculpture in one, no, not a sculpture, painting, unique painting. You know, they have a unique painting in the world. The artists. Can you imagine?
And a million postcards.
And the people who got the 1 out of 5 videos, you know, there are the happy few having the 5 videos in the world. So, you know, if they are shown on the internet for many people, so what's the problem? What's the problem for me?
No, I wonder because let's take, for instance, the case of in Asia. You know, I guess artists are happy to find some videos from abroad posted on the internet, and that's, I think, also a source of inspiration. I mean, do you know about this phenomenon? Can you actually trace in the work of young artists the way they have been watching accurately some drawings that they found maybe on the internet, like the movie Conchi, or the case of Bruce Nauman. If you take the work of Li Ming, which we saw today, but I mean, not this work in particular, that was the first work that was screened. He did many other works in which he's really inspired by Bruce Nauman's work. So don't you think that the internet also plays a role in circulating those early references?
So just now I had a very long discussion with one of our writers, because there's a Bruce Nauman show going to open. It's exactly the same show in Sholanda. It's going to open in, I think, in Roma or in New York anyway. And so he wanted to write it, and then we start brainstorming like to bring the show and also to bring the work of Bruce Nauman into the context of Asia. And we really scratch our head like who are the artists, like younger generation Asian artists, that we can prove, like analyze that their work is influenced by him. And we had difficulties of saying it that for 100% sure, because you, I mean, unless you go to the artist and interview the artist to find out, to trace the kind of image in the work, and so we are still struggling with that article. But I also wonder, like, how, unless those artists who become pretty successful in their career, that they can travel to the West. Otherwise, I'm wondering like how much, like how many of these kind of master works are accessible online, and they can really have a chance to see it and be inspired. So
well, there is the world of Ubu Web, the famous website that is now a very rich anthology of early video and audio work. That is the artists agree with it. They select a few works that want to be screened in this platform in full length, and that is, I think, a very important resource for many artists all over the world. But it's not also well known, so I guess it's also a matter of being informed. But I feel also that there are a lot of remakes of early video works in Asian art. I mean, right now I'm not able to say names, but I've seen many video performances being redone and displaced and reinterpreted in other contexts. So I think there is a really underground circulation of these templates.
I'm also aware of older generation artists who, back in these 60s and 70s, they did performances, which is kind of happening rather than performance in a sense. And some of them have a few photos, some of them like totally no documentation. For example, like artists in Pakistan in particular. So they, because of now like a lot more research has been done, and they're doing the retrospective shows and this, and so they have this idea of restaging the performance, and one of the ways also to now that video or like the technology is so available, they also start doing this restaging the performance and the documentation as well. But yeah, sorry I will not be able to answer your question, like taking certain Western and master directly in relation to the younger generation.
At the Pompidou, you follow the Asian scene, and what is the view of the museum? What is your view on the development of the interest for video in the Asian scene?
There was in fact this big exhibition in 2003 called Alors la Chine.
I went there and I wrote one work.
Yes, and so many works were acquired on this occasion, and then recently some more recent works, but also an artist like Song Dong, for instance, was not in the collection and has been acquired recently, like really the fathers of video art in China. It's impossible to say there's an Asian, scene that you can, of course, define and qualify. I think there are some very diverse and interesting experiments. There's a very quick, in fact, way of experimenting with everything, which is extremely stimulating and very promising. But again, I think that's what's for the case of China, which is the case I know the best. It's true that in the early stages of what is called video art in the early 90s, you had really these two type of tendencies. The first with Zhang Peili, which we just mentioned, which was very raw, very simple, one action, one sequence of video. And on the other side, Yang Fudong, who was, and both of them are in Hangzhou, which has a department of new media art. And Yang Fudong was inspired by the model of cinema, which he knew only through photographs. So it's very beautiful how he managed to construct the time structure of his video or film, I don't know how to call it, through the eye of photographic frames of the cinema image. So in a very sophisticated manner. So you have these two models which are very strong from the beginning. And I think that's like everywhere. Now you have still this oscillation between these two, the poor image that goes on the internet, that can be easily transmitted and can be displayed both on a screen or projected, doesn't have a specific installation format, can circulate anywhere. And then you have on the other side very sophisticated, installation-based moving image work where the size of the room, the color of the walls, carpets, everything, the model of the projector are consigned in a very accurate way in contracts and things. And in general, they are editions, and they have this other connotation of a more precious type of work. So, and now there is also the new model of VR production, which is, I think, very powerful right now in Asia. There's a lot of experiment being done, which offers as many possibilities, ranging from the photographic type of film to animation, digital animation, and so forth. So, yeah, it's still in progress.
The question I wanted to ask, because I wanted to ask you the same question that you asked me. If you have a video from an artist and it's an edition and you pay some money for it, do you agree that the artist is going to show that video on internet?
Okay, I'm on the artist side. I think that the role of institutions and collectors is to support the artist production. And if the fact of displaying the work on the internet makes sense with regard to the concept of the work and the general concept of the practice, I agree with it. I don't mind. Because I think that, again, if the fact of being on the internet can do justice to the work, that it's a frame of experience for the work that is in the space of the museum and so forth, or of public art, in the sense of sculpture in a garden or so forth. But it's very essential, and the way artists have this, sometimes simply posting their images they take, or posting stories, as you mentioned. It is a part of their practice, but should we consider them as a work of art that is conceived and finalized as an art form? This is, I think, a second degree, a second step to take. It's not exactly the same. Also, the question of should we save, internet art, web art? There are some people like Lev Manovich, a big specialist of media art, who says we should not, be obsessed with preserving anything. Those forms of expression, like what is called net art, another category, were thought simply to be ephemeral and to stay for the life of the time they are visible on the internet and then disappear. And that's the essence of it. Like many other forms, like the way you behave, the way you dress, the way you meet with people, the way you talk. I mean, those are aspects of can be aspects of artistic practice that are not meant to become something that stays in history, but are essential in our practice. Merci.
Super.
About the work that makes sense. I don't mind because the institution will keep a better version, HD version of the work. We'll of course screen it in other conditions, and it will be another experience. And there are two different things for me. So I think that again, when it's the desire of the artist and it's coherent with his practice, I really follow the wish.
What do you think if, for example, like the postcard reproduction of a famous painting actually makes the work, the original work, becoming more valuable because it's so well known like globally. So for video work, because it's available online, it becomes so popular, so iconic of the artist, and you own one of the 5 editions, and the value of the work becomes higher because it's iconic. Would you think that it's would they go as a collector?
I don't believe that if an artist, unknown artist, is showing a video on the internet, he will immediately his prices go up like mad. I don't think so. But I agree with Marcella. The thing is that we have a long discussion with the director of the TET, of the Nouveaux Médias, and also the director of the MoMA, of the station in Amsterdam. And at the beginning we were all against showing the videos from the artists showing on the internet. But at the end of a long discussion, we all agreed that for certain purposes, like for the learning for students, for professors and so on, it was well. Yeah.
We shall open to the public unless you have other important statements.
So, if you follow the game, do you think that all the young artists working with Creative Commons can't be collecting? And I think in being a collector, you also have this idea of not curating, but having a selection of work. So I guess that having some art and they are also available on internet, on even the story on Instagram, which is a new way of posting new art. It can be compatible with buying some art. I don't know. I think there is really this idea of helping the artist to produce new art, to show new art, and if you have the art on your collection, then it's up to the artist to exhibit inside the museum. You are a part of a big world, and it's not only an individual question, but it also helps the artist to share the work.
If I can answer as an institution representative, I'd say that the role, as I said before, the role of museums and collections is to, in fact, help the artists to produce, because the market, in fact, of video art, as we have seen, is not as good as the one for objects and based art. Also, the role is to preserve, to conserve, and this is also a question Jean had made reference to. It's a real commitment to preserve a work. It costs a lot of money, actually, to migrate those immaterial work and have them, transferred regularly to new media. Because, of course, the purpose of old forms of art is to stay in time, and the purpose of the technology and the people who produce the technology right now is, of course, the quickest as possible to have the obsolescence of the media, so that you buy new stuff and new devices. So it's a struggle, it's a continuous struggle, and the obsolescence is happening quicker and quicker. So now the migration of the works is to be done more and more often. So it's a very big commitment that again, it's a totally different context than just, having a work on the internet or...
The galleries, in fact, the galleries, when you buy a work from a gallery, you know what they do? They tell you, this is my baby and take care of it. And that's it. That's it. They give you the work and you have to take care of it. Like a baby. And nobody's going to do it for you see. So that's why she said the preservation, the conservation of the work is so important, and the migration, as she said very rightly, is very important. In fact, I read a sentence of Bill Viola in an American newspaper. I think it was probably wrong, but he was saying video is like the human being, the human race. They transmit themselves from generation to generation. And that's the thing, migration. And talking about the young people, one way to find young people is to go to the school. Because if you go to the school like Le Frénois, which is the Pottery School of Video and Film, you go each year and there is an exhibition. You go and you see, and we bought a lot of video from the artists from that school in the first or second year. And you have Serge Pontois, you have many schools, and Beaux-Arts of Lyon and whatever. So it's a very good source. And, it's a good source, and if you have the feeling, why not go to school and young artists? Why not? Huh? Agree. Because afterwards you have a good satisfaction when the artist is making nothing to add.
If I can give an advice in this regard, never acquire a DVD, right? You'll never be able to preserve it, so you should always acquire HD formats from the start.
It's a big problem because actually before we start the database, we know that in Shenzhen, like very close to China, there's a guy who used to be a writer, but he had a bookshop. And he's very close to all these artists. So he had a copy of VHS from the artist who gave the copy to him for free. It's kind of archival, like in the library. And now I don't know how many copies of VHS he has, and there's no kind of condition to preserve that. VHS you also need certain conditions, right? And he doesn't have the budget, the fund to transfer the material. But then he had a contract with the artist that he can't pass the work to a second hand to someone else. He can't keep copies of, he can make copies of the work or whatever. So no idea what's going to happen to that collection, which is he got them for free and as a librarian, as an archive, for archival purpose. But then there's no public fund or no museum in China that will be able to help. So that's another reason.
That's the
to preserve the work, particularly the physical
But
copy.
if you cannot transfer the copyright, that's a problem in fact, because it means that he's not allowed to have someone else transfer the work and record the work. So that's this link between the physical copy and the copyright has always been a problem. I mean, when you do a contract, when you acquire a contract, you should always, in fact, describe the possibility of migrating the work, and it's not only linked to the medium of acquisition, but the work itself and the many forms it can acquire through migration. Any other questions, remarks?
Come on. It's your only chance. It's finished.
Do you have any other curiosity?
You don't dare. You are too shy.
But do you consider the things happening in the, for example, in the story Instagram, do you consider it as video art? But art who don't have materiality, is it video art? Like there is some art, Instagram, like for example, there is some artist posting 2 minutes video on the social media. Is it video art too?
It's a clip.
And you wait to keep
No, I think that many artists have a very interesting online practice, be it on Facebook, Instagram, or other social media. And but I think that I think we're reaching a moment when that there is more and more desire of having a link between art and life in general, and that those spaces may not be like the monument.